Hey y'all, what is going on? What is going on? It's your girl, Melba Pearson, Melba from Miami, Melba for Justice, also known as the Resident Legal Diva, and it is time for another Mondays with Melba. First off, before I begin, it is Pride Month, but keep in mind we have elections coming up in November. And remember that Amendment 3, which will legalize recreational cannabis, is on the in the state of Florida is on the ballot, as well as abortion and enshrining access to reproductive care and access to abortion in the Florida Constitution. We need 60% of Floridians to vote yes. I hope that I can count everyone on this call ready to do so. And if you have not done so already, make sure to renew your vote by mail ballot because of another new law that came out of the lovely legislature. Every single time there's an election, you need to sign up to get a vote by mail ballot if you want to vote from the comfort of your home. I highly suggest you do that. So go to vote.org. They'll link you to where you need to go. But basically, you're going to the Supervisor of Elections website for whatever your county is. Log on there and make sure to connect and get your vote by mail ballot. All right. So with all that being said, I am so excited to bring on Maxx Fenning, who is just an amazing, amazing activist and is really going to center us on Pride Month and ways that we can meaningfully, not performatively, but meaningfully support and engage with our LGBTQ plus family. So Maxx, welcome to Mondays with Melba.
Oh, I'm so excited to be here. Hello, hello, hello.
Oh my gosh, I so appreciate you taking the time to chat. So, can you please introduce yourself to the viewers and tell us a little bit about your career journey? I know you're like you've accomplished a super ton of things at such a young age, but loving that. I love to see it. So, go tell everybody about all the fabulous things.
Yeah, absolutely. So my name is Maxx. I am the founder and executive director of PRISM. A little bit about us. We are a proudly youth-led nonprofit that works to expand access to LGBT inclusive education and sexual health resources for young people in South Florida. We actually started as a high school club at my high school GSA, my high school, and we really wanted a fresh slate and a clean slate and a fresh space for young people to feel safe on their school campus. And so that was the spirit of PRISM. Our school's administration absolutely loathed the idea of us having more than one LGBT club on our high school's campus. And so after a year of fighting, we decided to form a nonprofit to take our business out of just one school and out into the community. And now here we are, 4 years later.
So amazing. So can you share a little bit about the services that folks can get from PRISM and just, sort of like how do you work with the community to really encourage that safe space?
Yeah, of course. So I like to think of our work as falling into three buckets. So the first one is content and educational resources. So we reach young people where they increasingly turn to for information, which is online. It's on social media, TikTok, Twitter, X, whatever Spaceman wants to call it, Instagram. That's our shtick. That's our bread and butter. And so we give young people information about their history, their community, their bodies, and themselves. So that's LGBT history, that's sexual health, that's gender identity and sexual orientation, that's LGBT current events, the whole kit and caboodle. The whole shebang, and giving them that information where they're turning to for it. And then the other side of that work is policy advocacy. So we make those grueling treks up to Tallahassee during our legislative session, fighting the good fight, pushing back against policies and laws that are going to do queer youth harm, and then pushing for policies and laws that are going to support and uplift them and create a school environment where they can feel safe and affirmed. And then the third bucket is our PRISM Student Ambassador Program, which we call PSAP for short, which is a resource for GSAs. Like I said, we have roots in student organizing and in the high school club world. And so we provide a whole host of resources to GSAs, again, to help them create those safe spaces on their school campuses.
And for those who don't know, I only learned this myself a few years ago. GSA is Gay Straight Alliance, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so for some, they call it a Gay Straight Alliance. Other ones call it Gender and Sexuality Alliances.
Okay. Cool. Yeah. Because I know. So, especially if you don't have a little one, you may not be aware. But I thought it was very interesting in terms of the education component. Can you speak to a little bit why it's so important to really ground that queer history in your work? I mean, are students getting that in school or?
Yeah, so it's no secret that LGBT inclusive education has increasingly come under attack in our state with things like the Don't Say Gay or Trans law, the Stop Woke Act, all of these things that are infringing on young people's rights to be able to learn about the real world and the people in it. And so it's even more important that young people are able to find those outside of traditional academia as well, and that they're able to have that information. I'm always of the belief that history gives so much context for the world around us that it informs where we are today and helps people understand how we got here. A key example that I often point to is when the Don't Say Gay or Trans law was first moving through the House in 2022. And we immediately saw this as a no promo homo law. And a lot of folks don't know what that is, but no promo homo laws were these laws that cropped up in the 80s and 90s, peak AIDS epidemic, when there was so much fear around the LGBT community that basically prohibited teachers from, quote, promoting a homosexual lifestyle in schools. And obviously that's super bigoted, that's super homophobic. And even red states, even states that have like conservative legislatures over the past 2 decades have been repealing these laws since being passed. So we had a number of states that had these laws on the books that had repealed them all the way up until 2020. And so 2022 rolls around, we see this like what is essentially a no promo homo law that's put in this like pretty packaging of parental rights. And we're like, oh, this is a terrible thing that we've already identified as terrible throughout history. No, this is never going to pass. But we neglected to recognize the fact that a lot of people don't know that history. And that's one of those key examples of why the context that history gives us is so important for understanding our world today.
Yeah, absolutely. Because it's very much like what's old is new, right? And what's new is old. It's just like history has a way of, I always used to say history repeats, but somebody once schooled me and said, no, history rhymes because it's not the same exact thing. It's a variation thereof, taking into consideration new times, place, whatever, but it's still the same concept. It's still coming from the same place. So if we're not aware of the history, we can't be prepared for when the next iteration of the same thing we fought back against 20, 30, 40 years ago pops back up, because people aren't exactly coming up with brand new ideas in terms of being hateful. That's just reality. But for real. But with that being said, you have been amazing at motivating and mobilizing the youth. And so what's sort of the secret sauce there, and why is that so important?
Yeah, I think it's so important that when we're talking about movement work in any capacity, the folks that are most directly impacted by that work are the ones leading the charge and are the ones that are empowered to make that change that they want to see in the world. So, like I said, we're not just a youth serving organization, we are a youth-led organization. That means we have young people everywhere, from our volunteers, staff, board of directors, everywhere. And I think that it's so important that young people can feel empowered, that young people can have decision-making power in movement work and in activism and in organizing and all of the work that we're doing that is meant to be of service to young people. Oftentimes we get left out of the conversation. I've been told time and time again to let the adults do the work, which is crazy because here I am doing the work alongside them. And so I think it's so important that we're able to uplift young people in these spaces. And I think that a part of that is really taking them seriously and really having the gall and the audacity to give them the power to make those decisions.
Yeah, I mean, I really love what you said about the whole taking ownership and the leadership perspective, right? Because so many times people are like, "Oh, yes, this is an organization for the students, for the youth," but like the youth aren't represented anywhere in the hierarchy. So you're bringing your quote unquote adult sensibilities without really dealing with and working with and supporting and uplifting the people who you say you're intending on impacting. So really including them and centering them in discussion is huge. And again, like, how ridiculous are people to say let the adults handle it? Because I don't know. I'm a student of the civil rights movement, and I look back at Stanley Stokely Carmichael. I look at Dr. King, Malcolm X, all those folks. They ended up being assassinated, murdered at the age of 33, which means they got started in 33 to 38 was kind of the range of where they ended up leaving this earth. But they got started in their 20s. This wasn't like they waited until the ripe age of 50 to then come out and start doing activism. And if you are, no shame, that's cool. Wherever you want to get in, start, just as long as you start. But again, a lot of this movement work is built on the backs of young people, right? So to exclude them from the discussion, especially when it comes to policy, is totally ridiculous. But anyway, be that as it may, can you talk a little bit about Pride Month and what Pride specifically means to you?
Yeah, absolutely. I think Pride means a lot of things to me. First of all, I'll start by saying that Pride is a protest. It always has been, and it always will be. That it is important for us to recognize the roots of Pride as a celebration in the face of oppression. Right? The first Pride parade was on the 1-year anniversary of the Stonewall riots. They named June 28th, 1970, Christopher Street Liberation Day, and that was meant to say, look, we are here, we are queer, and we are not going anywhere. I like to think back to, before we had Pride as it is now, before we had Pride Month and all of these celebrations and festivals, to what protests for LGBT rights looked like prior to all of that. And a lot of times it was like gay men in suits with picket signs, just walking quietly down the sidewalk. And that was what a lot of the movement looked like. And part of the reason why is because they wanted to just look like they were everybody else. They were like, if we look like straight people and we act like straight people, then we can be accepted just like straight people are. And what Pride did is it said, we don't need to do that. The whole point is that we want to be accepted for who we are. So we're going to be who we are on the street, out in public, and people are just going to have to deal with that. And I think that's what's beautiful about Pride, is that it is just this unabashed, unadulterated authenticity and this just daring boldness to exist as you are, and the full spectrum of color that presents itself as.
Yeah, I love that. It's just so interesting to see how respectability politics kind of pops up everywhere, right? So it's like, oh, if I can, assimilate and look like everyone else, I'll get my rights. I won't be harmed. And sadly, we've learned from history that's not really the case, right? So you might as well be yourself and be authentic, because again, you're not going to be able to dismantle, all the, basically, what's the phrase? You can't dismantle basically the master's house by using the master's tools or something like that. So basically you're trying to use the tools that basically oppressed you to try to get your rights back. And that does not always work, right? So you're going to have to create a whole new lane and a whole new approach to be able to, number one, educate people. And then more importantly, make sure that you are advocating and getting those allies to be able to get to where we want to be, which is equality for all, and just stay out of people's business. It's kind of that simple, really. But okay, so Max, can you share with us how people can learn more about PRISM, how they can support, the ways they can support? I'm sure y'all are taking donations. I'll be very sure to drop the link in the comments. Hint, hint, y'all, okay? But go ahead, Max, let us know how we can support.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, First and foremost is recognizing that visibility, especially when we're talking about Pride, right? Visibility is so important. And that is the same for PRISM as an organization. A lot of the work that we do is on social media. And so making sure that work and those resources are spread as far and as wide as possible. The more people that see it, the more people that can learn and benefit from that information. So share us on social media. On Instagram, it's prism.fl. On Twitter, it's prism_FL. On TikTok, it's prismfl. For whatever reason, the punctuation usernames could not line up when we were making those accounts. And then our website, www.prismfl.org. So sharing us on all the socials is a big part of that. Obviously, donations are a good one, right? This work is not cheap. It takes resources, and resources that young people are often not provided in these spaces, and that young people should be provided in these spaces. So pocketbooks, opening up your pocketbooks and sharing what you can is super, super helpful. And then also getting engaged and getting involved directly. So signing up to volunteer with us. We have so many different opportunities, whether it be at Pride events, getting engaged in helping us make those educational resources, showing up to protests, showing up to rallies, school board meetings. We always got stuff going on, and always ways that folks can plug in.
Love it. Love it. And y'all, I will be making sure to have all of that information in the comments or in the body of the description. So definitely check that out. These are some very, very easy things you can do that will highlight the work that PRISM's doing and is a meaningful way of engaging rather than, oh my gosh, yay, Pride. Here's a way that you're actually helping, right? So dig in, folks. I know we can do it together. So Maxx, thank you so much for the work that you're doing, for being an inspiration, because you don't know this, you inspire me like daily. I don't always share it, but I'm putting it out there publicly. But you do, because you really have. I just remember always seeing you heading up to the Capitol. You're like, all right, we got to get another bus. We got to get these students up to Tallahassee to lobby and all of that. And that just makes my heart sing, because the reality is, I'm an auntie in this movement, right? And so it's the next generation that we need to lean on to keep this fight going. And you are at the head of that. And for this, I thank you. So Maxx, keep on keeping on, and looking forward to having you on again soon. And to the rest of y'all, take good care.